Hello, Alice.
Hello.
Oh my goodness gracious. I'm so excited to get to chat with you today. Welcome to the Perinatal Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, a pleasure. Well, let's just jump right in. I'm so excited to get to chat with you. We've been doing some chatting, obviously, over messages. And so how did you decide to get into your program? What inspired you?
To become a postnatal specialist.
Yes.
Yeah. So I am over in London, and I had my son when 11 years ago. He's actually just gone off to big school today. I had both my kids, and I had Lockie when I was about 29, and I had a C-section, and I was really cared for all up to being pregnant, and then having I ended up having a kind of a bit of an emergency, but not like super rushed. But it wasn't what I expected in terms of my introduction to motherhood. And then we had a little bit of a healthcare sort of support afterwards, and then nothing. And I'm not a gym bunny. I'm not somebody who's constantly doing exercise. I think when I tried to run, I vomited. Like, my body was like, we reject exercise.
No.
Stop that. So I was like, well, I don't know what I should be doing. I don't know what I can I do? And they'd said, oh, you'll have your 6-week check, and then you'll be fine. And I was like, oh, okay. So I go to this 6-week appointment, and I'm like, don't you want to look at me? Like, do you want to talk about me? And they sort of, it was I'd heard about how crap it was, but I wasn't really prepared for how non-existent it was. And at the time, I realized that I had postnatal depression. And I said to them, like, I'm not feeling good in myself, and like, I don't know what I should be doing. And it was very much like, you can take some drugs, or you can do some therapy, or you can just wait and see how it goes. And so through therapy, I know we Brits are not brilliant with therapy, like you guys across the pond who do it like breakfast, and I wish we did. But it was new to me, but it changed my life and really sort of put me back on the road emotionally. But physically, I was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I really still struggled. Anyway, I just muddled through, and then we had my daughter, and I had both of my kids through a form of IVF called PGD, which is a kind of pre-implantation genetic screening, so that we screened out a genetic condition I have. So already, like, getting pregnant and having babies is already quite a physical, lots of poking and prodding and hoovering and people being all up in my grill, So, and I had Ottilie, and again, another C-section. And the same sort of thing, like, no real advice, no real guidance. And I was like, God, if I feel this way, like, if I'm somebody who's actively looking, I live around like Nappy Valley, there must be other mums out there looking for similar advice. And I was like, there's a gap in the market here for women to get advice. And that's when I then trained to be a Pilates instructor.
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love completely with Pilates, and then I then just thought, God, this postnatal bit is such a gap. And I specialized in postnatal, and then that kind of set me on the path to like my passion for teaching postnatal.
I can't tell you how many guests I have had on this show who have said, I became the person I wish I had when I needed that person.
Yeah, exactly.
It is jarring, even in a country where you have national health services. It is so disheartening to hear, like, is over here, we've got these appointments, and towards the end of your pregnancy, you're going 2 and 3 times a week, depending on what's going on, and you have the baby, and then they're like, okay, cool, see you in 6 weeks. And it's like, what?
Where's my care?
Well, I just had a human Ziploc baggied out of me. Like where I'm okay. I'm just okay. That's everything is fine. And it really is such a shock. And yeah, I remember my son was on my breast eating while they were putting an IUD in. Like it just was like a very wild situation. And it's like, it's so shocking. And then of course, I've had pelvic floor physical therapists on, and I was like, I didn't know that was a thing. And postnatal Pilates, I didn't know that was a thing when I was, none of this is something that is there. And then of course the mental health component, which I'm excited to hear that people in other countries think that we're doing so well. I do think we're doing so well. I do think we are doing not so well, so much better, let's say.
Your attitude to therapy is different. I think that's the thing. Whether it's available more widely, but the idea that having therapy isn't, oh my God, what the hell's the matter with you? You're
absolutely.
It's a bit more like, I'm going to the gym. Yeah, I'm going to my therapist.
Very much that. And yeah, I could get on a whole soapbox and go very much further into the, is it readily accessible and how much are we paid as therapists and so on and so forth. But yes. And so that's such an interesting thing. And it's just something that we don't think about, the idea of how do we take care of our bodies. They tell you at 6 weeks, generally speaking, of course, everybody's experience is different, but generally speaking, on a normal trajectory that, okay, now you can go back to working out. And it's like, what does
that mean?
Heart and body need?
And also that everybody is treated like, well, everything's fine. So why would you be making a fuss if something's not quite right? Like, you just had a baby, you haven't like broken a leg or something. And there is this sort of like, well, you're doing something natural and very normal, something women were designed to do. So why would you now make a thing? Aren't you happy? Isn't everything perfect because you got what you wanted? You got your baby and everything's fine. And there is still this kind of like muddle along everything, like don't make a fuss. Of course you feel different, you've had a baby, but a lot of people don't know what the benchmark for normal should be. So they don't know what they're experiencing is, just part of the course, just normal recovery, or it's something that actually they need some support with. And what I discovered is that my postnatal qualification that I got is quite frankly crap, because the training that I got was like, oh, if a mum is pregnant, for a start, they put prenatal and postnatal together like they are one and the same. Yeah. So the pregnancy stuff, obviously. Sure. The pregnancy stuff is like, just don't put a mum on her tummy. and then the postnatal was like, oh, just change a few little things like no sit-ups. And that was kind of the sum of it. And I was like, right. And then I started teaching. And I got these women who were going, so I've got this thing called like and I'm like, diastasis? And they're like, yes. Or I feel like my vagina is like hanging out. What's that? And I was like, I don't know, because I wasn't taught this. Right. And so, I was like, so I had to go and do like advanced postnatal training, because I was like, I didn't get taught this as a practitioner, and I've been given a qualification. I've been sent out into the world to rehab. And so part of me is just like, it was like being given your provisional driver's license and then handed the keys to like an articulated lorry and being asked to reverse it backwards. Like, I was like, you cannot, this is not deep enough, this qualification. Yeah. And so I then went and did like way more qualifications, but they were all not specific to Pilates. I was like, I don't have gym equipment. I don't have a TRX. I don't have like all of this stuff in my backpack. Right. So that's when I then was like, right, I need more than this, and my clients need more than this. Yeah. So that was then when I just got super, it blew my mind, the number of women that I would speak to that were like, pelvic organ prolapse is something that I just assumed was what I had to put up with. Yes. Or a diastasis. All of these things, they're dirty words that people were just like, ooh, and I pee myself. That's normal, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I literally had a pelvic floor physical therapist on, and the title of our episode was, well, it was something like, so maybe I don't have to pee myself, because
Yeah.
we don't know what we don't know, and so many people, oh, that's someone else's job. That's someone else's job. Oh, you need to talk to this person. You talk about this. And sometimes we don't even know to ask because we colloquially hear that peeing yourself after a vaginal delivery is normal. My girlfriend, we were out once, and her son was probably 6 months old at the time, and she was like, I have to pee because I'm at a 9 and I don't have a 10 anymore. Like, because she'd had a vaginal delivery. She's like, if I don't go right now, like, I'm just gonna pee all over the street in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. So let's and we're just kind of like, yeah, ha ha, I guess that's what it's like. My vagina feels like it's hanging out. Ha ha. And
Yeah, it's this
nobody has.
really, it really annoys me the way people minimize it. They're like, they just brush it off as being just a thing. Oh, well. And I'm
Yes.
like, literally, you do not have to put up with this. You should, if anything, in your postnatal body, you should understand yourself in a way that you have never understood yourself. And this is the other thing that I could get really irate about, is what we women are taught about our bodies in school. Like,
Or not.
or not. I mean, you can literally stick it on the back of a postage stamp. There
Like,
is
truly.
zero. And when I speak to people who are pregnant or in those early postnatal phases, and I'm like, so you know your Kegels? And they'll often look at me and go, yeah, side eye, a little bit of like, mm-hmm. And I said, when your health visitor said to you, oh, are you doing your Kegels? And you went, uh-huh, uh-huh. Give yourself a little bit of a like, oh, were you doing it? Do you not know? And they were like, honestly, I've no idea. I've no idea. I thought I was doing what I should be doing. But, you know, young women need to be taught this information before they're pregnant.
Absolutely.
You need to understand the relationship their body has with, you know, breathing and how it's all impacted. And then when you go and shove a baby in there, how it changes. And that's okay. But as you said, you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of people don't know where to look. And if they go to their GP as a first point of call, often the GP, you know, they're amazing. They know a little bit about a huge amount of topics,
Right.
but they are not going to be able
Right.
to kind of dig down into more specific topics. And that's where kind of being able to access more specialist knowledge is really, you know, really key.
Yes. And that's why I'm so passionate about these conversations, because, you know, I'd love to be able to find a way to improve the education system in the US, in the UK, of like how young uterus havers learn about their bodies. And it's just, for us, it was 5th grade. It was, here's kind of a picture of, pardon my language, like your crotch area.
You
Here's
can
some
say
pads.
the word vagina.
Yeah. Here's your pads. Here are your, there was no labia. There was no vulva. There was certainly no clitoris. Heaven forbid. Heaven forbid we learn about that.
Dirty word. I went to a
How
Catholic
very dare.
school. No one talked about that.
Yes. And here's some pads. Here's some deodorant. Peace be with you. Like,
yeah.
It's so wild. And so I'm really excited that there is more content for, which of course the pendulum can swing too far the other way. Say off Dr. Google, everybody. Like, we don't, right? But it's like, you want to figure out like the accessing this information, having these conversations, feeling empowered, feeling normalized to be able to ask and have conversations, but also not then terrifying yourself into the deep, dark depths of the interwebs. But yeah, it's just, you know, I went in, my water broke just after midnight on my due date, or whatever we call it these days. And I for sure irrationally was like, oh my gosh, like it's after midnight. I'm going to have a baby by like 7 a.m. It's going to be lovely. And then 7:25 p.m. I'm having a C-section because I'm just not moving along. And there's just so much. And I want to be very clear. I love my obstetrician down in Houston, Texas. She is spectacular. But again, it's just kind of like, and they're kind of used to it too, right? So they're just kind of breezing through the motions. Whereas for you, it's your first time and you don't know where to stop and pause and ask for more. And yeah, it's very tough.
And also, you know, there's a real kind of culture of just trying to kind of not make a fuss And I don't know if it's a British thing or whether it is a mum thing, that you can do it all and you can kind of fit it all together. And because we see so many other people and they look like they're rocking it in every department, and we're really bad at this as moms, like the comparisonitis, not helped at all by social media. But you know, everybody's recovery is so unique and they all need something a little bit different. And one of the things, and you touched on it earlier, is the emotional support. And so I work with all of my clients like one-to-one, because it's where you kind of really understand the psychological side of things as well as the physiological. So something like pelvic organ prolapse, for example, your symptoms are exacerbated when you're stressed, when you're tired, at a different phase in your cycle, and all of those things. So it's not just a case of like, oh, which exercises are going to help me do these things. It's about what's the whole body doing, the mind as well as the body, because some days you're going to feel like, oh, I'm going to crush it and I'm going to really like loads of energy, really big. And then other days you're just not feeling that kind of good. And it's really easy to beat yourself up for that and be like, oh, I'm really weak, I'm really pathetic, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough. And we do that to ourselves so much with this, like, well, if she's out there running with her buggy and her baby looks younger than me, why aren't I out there doing it? You know, why aren't I able to do these things? And that shame spiral just gets worse. And then you get all your negative behaviors that go associated with that, like the bad eating, plus you're probably not sleeping. And it just gets kind of, you know, you wind yourself down, and that's when it gets really, really hard to kind of pull yourself out of. And we know how powerful exercise is in just terms of pushing through some endorphins, but get the blood pumping and making you feel like you're a potato, because often that's how it feels like when you're a new mum, right?
Oh my gosh,
so it's also about like a tiny bit. That's the thing that I like tell all of my mums, like, just like, even if when you're brushing your teeth you were to stand with your arm against a door frame and just stretch your chest when you're brushing your teeth, because you've been bent over like this, either at your desk or you're feeding or whatever, you will feel amazing. And if you just give yourself a tiny bit of amazing in the day, it will lift you incrementally all the time.
Alice, I love this so much. And it's so true. I just was on a group that I do with a girlfriend of mine. It's our quarterly accountability crew. We meet every other week and we talk about a lot of these things, a little less of the physical piece, but this very specifically was something that I ended our session with today. Was it's hard for us because we know what we used to be able to do. Now, you never were a runner, so that's not something that you aspired to anyway, but like whatever.
No, not true. I started running recently. I didn't puke.
And you didn't puke. Yes, I love it. Right? And that's really cool. So, and again, also, if we could quickly pivot away from where I was going with perfectionism, which is if you do have a goal that you can continue to work towards getting there slowly and incrementally, which is very exciting. Love that. And the perfectionism piece of like, I used to be able to go to the gym for a full hour every day and and this and that. And if I can't go for the full hour, well, then I might as well not go at all. And it's like, no, Alice is literally saying, while you're brushing your teeth, put your arm at a 90-degree angle and bend it up against the wall for a little stretch for your shoulders to help. And just doing that one little thing can be such a difference. And if you have 10 minutes, use 10 minutes. And if you've got an hour, that's really cool too, but also giving yourself the grace that you may not be able to bench press or deadlift what you were lifting before, and giving your body and yourself grace while still allowing yourself to experience the joy of movement and the endorphins and the serotonin and the free vitamin D if you're going outside. And
exactly. And there's two things actually that you maybe just think of there. So the little and often piece. I remember when I was coming out of the PND, I painted my toenails, and I'd done nothing for myself in probably about 3 months. And I remember the simple act of painting my toenails was like this massive shift for me, because I was like, I'm taking care of myself and I'm putting myself first. And I remember it like it was literally it was like a cloud lifted, just painting my toenails. And it was so big for me. And it's those tiny little acts of self-love when you're going through a difficult time. It doesn't have to be big. It could be literally light a candle or something.
Yes.
I mean, they shift you so powerfully. And, you know, you can't expect to find a magical unicorn hour to do some exercise when you're a mum. Like, it's unrealistic to think, oh, well, I will when, because there is never a moment when an hour just crops up in your day for you to be like, oh, I happen to be wearing some clothing and I'm going to go do some exercise. It's crap. It just doesn't happen.
Yes.
Totally unrealistic. But what could happen is that you fall out of bed and then you do like sideways and you get down onto the floor and you maybe just stretch for like 2 minutes.
Yes.
Or you just breathe before you get out of bed, or when there'll be a pocket somewhere in your day where you can literally take time for yourself. And it's literally why I named my business Your Time Pilates, because I was like, you need to take time for yourself. Even if it's literally 2 minutes, you have to take that time for yourself, because literally prompted by my toenail painting, when I did that, something shifted in my kind of recovery, but also the relationship that I had with like my emotions, my mood, and the kind of, I've got to stop this flagellation of like punishment and a need to look after myself.
Yes. It really is. I'm sorry. Excuse me. It really is such an interesting thing where we struggle so much to allow ourselves to take on some of the grace of course, we would expect somebody else to, of course, you should go do that. Of course, you should take care for you, but not me. I hold myself to this higher standard. And why? I don't think I'm a better person than other people. So why don't I also deserve to take up the same space or to take the same breaks or to give myself all of that as well?
Because you're a shit mother when you do that.
Obviously.
Yeah. And that's kind of like this thing that like, if I take time, if I'm not 100% with my baby, doing all of my things, I must have abandoned my baby and I'm a shit mother. You know, that's the kind of the cycle we get into. And so there's this like guilt of taking time away from that sweet little bundle of noise. But even as they get bigger, you know, like to one of the things I would say to my clients is like, you've got daughters. So what are you teaching your daughters?
Literally where I was going next, Alice. Go ahead.
What are you teaching your daughters? That you basically burn yourself into a husk. You are a slave for everybody else. And that you just keep going until you're dust. Is that what we're teaching our kids? No. Yes. Are you modeling how to be a mother, run your own business, hold a job, you know, be all of the things? But when it gets too fucking much, you pull the ripcord and say, I'm out of here. I'm off for a massage. I'm going to go do some exercise. I'm going to go for a walk without you or whatever it is.
Yes. Little Alice, we are one mind. And I knew I'm like, this is just going to be the moment where we become best friends on a podcast and people get to listen to it, because I feel so kindred with you already. But you are so in my mind of that. Of course, as a person's therapist, I always say, my goal is for you to be doing these things for yourself because you know that you deserve them. And because you are aware that you can take up space. I also understand that we don't operate in silos. So whatever you are doing, your children are witnessing, they're seeing it. So if you are burning yourself to a husk, if you are never taking care of yourself, your children see that. And so if you have children who are, if your kids ever want to have kids, whether they are birthing or non-birthing people, it doesn't matter. They're going to recognize, oh, well, that's what my mom did. So that means that mom needs to do the same thing, whether it's again, either one. So then are we setting our non-birthing people up, our boys up to expect that from their wives?
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I said daughters, but I was like, actually, it's just as important.
It's all the same. Yeah,
it's all the relationships. It's mirroring
every single one of them. So we're expecting. I do like to be so inclusive of trans.
I'm so sorry if I
no, Alice, we're on the same page. No. You're so right. But you're so right. Like, it's tough because it feels clunky sometimes to be like our birthing people and our non-birthing people. But so we're all doing.
I'm so sorry. I'm so.
Please don't be. No, I'm with you. But it is, we're saying like, I'm showing my daughter that if she wants to have a kid, that she needs to abandon herself, fully devote herself to her spouse and her children and the care of everyone around her except for herself. That is literally what I'm showing her. So whether or not you feel like you deserve that, do you feel like your children deserve that? Do you feel like you want your son to treat, if he marries a woman who has a baby, is that how you want him to expect of her? I'd like to believe there are people out there who, yes, like over in our country, they're trying to repeal the 19th Amendment so we can't vote anymore. No joke. I can't. But there are certainly people out there. I don't know why you're listening to this podcast. This is not your cup of tea, but please stay. We'd love to change your mind. Who are out there who believe that. But for the most of us who are here, we're not in that space. And so it's nice to be able to conceptualize it in that way of, if not for me, for my children, but also for me, so that I have the energy to be the best mom when I am present and in that moment with my children. Oh my gosh. Hold on. Okay. Sorry about the dogs. My goodness. Yes. So if not for yourself, for other people. And I wanted to go back to, so I want to apologize in advance because I'm being such an Anglophile right now of like the keep calm and carry on of it all. I know that that was a century ago, but we still kind of have that vision of y'all a little bit. And that's a very pejorative, like all English people are the same, but it's not true. But that energy also of women, like the importance of being low maintenance. It's such a, for us, we feel like it's such a badge of honor to be low maintenance because we were told that we can't ask for things, that we can't ask for help, that we have to be self-sufficient, we have to be independent and do it ourselves. And I am ready to say bullshit. And I'm ready to say, don't be high maintenance in a way that is intentionally disrespectful to other people, but you are allowed to want to be maintained. It's okay.
The thing that really pisses, there's somebody who did this. It was a film or something, and it was like, being a woman, you need to be quiet, but you also need to speak your mind. You need to be polite, but you also can like, and there was a whole speech. Do you remember the film?
Barbie.
Was it in Barbie? Exactly. It's like, you need to be this and this and this and this and this. And I really do think that women these days, I mean, we're fucked. Like, our mums, my mum didn't work. Like, she worked on the farm. So I grew up on a farm. And so, so every pet on the planet I've had, which is why this dog is really lucky that he exists. Because I'm not that like enamored by animals because they are hard work. So she the work that she did was like for the farm, but she was you know, she wasn't working in the same way that I am in terms of like so in my previous life I was in PR, and so I had a 9 to 5 and I had 2 kids. I live in London. My parents live in the middle of nowhere. They're not anywhere close. While my siblings live in London, they're not close as well. Like, we live little islands these days. Like, it's very rare to be in a little, like a lovely little community, but we are expected to be all the things all the time to all the people. And if you say, this is too much, sometimes I think the mental health conversation has kind of gone all the way around and then slaps you in the face the other side, because you know, it's okay to say that you're struggling, but then sometimes, I mean, I literally had a boss that was like, oh, if you've ever got any problems, you know, you must come and talk to me all the time. And I was like, oh, that's so lovely. And then I was like, hi, I've got some problems. And she went, really?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, because I kind of thought like it wasn't that big a deal, but if you're finding it difficult, and I was like, oh, you know, oh God, I've admitted a weakness and I'm not, you know, dealing with it. And so it's the kind of, one hand, you're allowed to say you're vulnerable, but then when you are vulnerable, oh dear, now we've got to put you in cotton wool and we've got to treat you differently. And oh, you're a drain on us. Yes. So like, it's no wonder a lot of people struggle to reach out for help.
It is true. It's so true. And that I reference the Barbie movie a lot in terms of the Barbie of like, Barbie can be anything and therefore you can be anything, but then the pendulum swung so far to, and then you have to be everything to everybody all the time at once, because and I don't want to blame all of Barbie because I loved Barbies growing up anyway. But the idea of being so fucked, yes, like you have to be thin, but you can't say you're thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but you also have to be thin. I have a little bit of the monologue memorized, but it's just every single piece of that is such a contradiction, and it's so hard. And in the film also, where the younger character who's, gosh, I can see her name. I apologize to the actress. She did a spectacular job, where she says, like, men hate women and women hate women. It's the one thing we can all agree on. And it's like, yeah. And the other part of that speech too is like, you have to love your kids, but don't talk about them too much. But also, like, we have to parent like we don't have a job and work like we don't have kids. And it's just, given the fact that that continues to be the societal expectation, how do we divorce ourselves from that narrative? How do we recognize and acknowledge that's an external narrative? It's not an internal voice. That's not how I really feel about my life. What am I going to do differently that helps me take care of myself so that I'm in the best space to take care of me and everyone around me and be a good friend and also be available at work, but also maybe sometimes not available at work, and also and.
Yeah. Do you know what though? So I turned 41 in March, and I genuinely think getting older allows you a bit more perspective to just say, fuck it.
Yes.
Fuck it and fuck you. If you are not on this train, I am not for you. And that's okay. You know,
yes.
I don't have friends that don't tolerate all of this. And I know that I'm an extrovert, and I know that I can be a lot. And, you know, like, that's okay. I'm not for everybody. And I think being a bit older gives you sometimes a little bit of perspective. And like, so my kids are now 11 and 8. And I was like, I am never wearing a bikini again.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't put this out. Who wants to see this? And, you know, I have that weird little like underneath my
the C-section overhang.
Like, little, yeah.
Yep.
It's a little shelf of delight.
Yep. Yep.
And I was like,
no,
not putting that out. And then my husband showed me a picture. We went on holiday and I had my boobs out. And I was like, fucking hell. God, you were gorgeous.
Right?
Sorry. I was like, you were gorgeous. Look at your body. And I was like, Alice Johnstone, your 70-year-old self is coming over to you and slapping you in the 40-year-old self face and saying, you are beautiful. Get in a fucking bikini. Get out there, because from here on out, it's a lot of skin tag. So get it out there now, you know?
Yes, our most recent episode of the show was with a dietitian, and so I apologize for those of you who are new, welcome, and those of you who listened to last week's, you're going to get to hear the same anecdote. But I went to Chicago a year ago to speak on a mental health panel, and it was the same weekend as a big music festival here called Lollapalooza. And God bless these Gen Z girls. They are out and proud with their rolls and lumps and bumps, and they are in tiny pieces of fabric, and they are so comfortable. And I just wanted to like literally walk over to them and be like, high fives, y'all. Yes, this is what I want my children to see. I don't ever want them to hear lumps and bumps in a derogatory way. We all have them. We are all humans. I don't ever want my kids to have to be worried about not eating like, we are in this body, we are fueling this body, we are making this body flexible and strong for our longevity and our comfortability, not to please somebody else's eyeballs or opinions. And hell yes, wear that bikini if you want to, and love the body that you're in. And it's so hard because it was beaten over our heads for so long not to.
Nothing looks as good as skinny feels or whatever.
Oh my gosh, that's a real thing. People say that.
I know. But you know, it's so oh God, poop is straight out of my head. What was I gonna say? About bikinis and being old. No, it's gone.
Well, if you think about it, I'd love to hear it. Well, I was talking about like the Gen Z of it all and how they're
and they're just brave for being out there. Oh, take naked photos of yourself now and put them somewhere for you alone.
Yeah.
And so that you can look back on your gorgeous body and actually celebrate. Yes, it's a bit lumpy and bumpy. And no, it doesn't look like your 17-year-old self was probably the last time I ever had like washboard abs, just because I'm a Pilates instructor. I teach Pilates. I am not somebody who like moves like a lava lamp. I have pain. Everybody's got all sorts of aches and things. And actually that reminds me of something you said about kind of this whole beating ourselves up for not being the way that we were. And this whole like, oh, bouncing back crap that we hear so much about. And I'm like, you are never going to be 20 ever again. It doesn't matter how hard you try, you are never going to be that person. You are actually going to be a better person because of the changes that you've made, because you've become a mum, because you have birthed a human being, because you have evolved and changed. You are never going backwards. Your knees, my mum always says, is your knees were bent the way for you to go forwards, not backwards. So go forwards and embrace what's coming in the future rather than turning around and crying about what's no longer in your front view. So I never talk about this bouncing back. It's like I'm evolving forward. I am growing into something even more spectacular.
Yes.
And we get one body. And because Mr. So Fabulous Jeff Bezos allows us to say, oh my God, I've forgotten my son's backpack. True story. Quick, Amazon Prime me a new backpack, and it arrives the next day. And we've got this mentality that we can do that with our bodies, that we just go, well, I'm going to go to the osteopath, we'll have a crack, or a poke with the physio, and then why aren't I fixed? You mean I've got to do work? I've got to put in something longer than 2 minutes, and I actually have to carry it on for the rest of my life if I want to feel strong. Because your 40-year-old body or 35 or however old you are is not as forgiving as when you were 20. You know, you to fall over and then the next day be fine.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when you watch your children fall over and you think their heads split open and they bounce back up and keep going, and you're like, okay, cool.
Exactly. But our bodies now, you know, you get one and you have to look after it and respect it. I mean, my God, if you have birthed more than one child, you are, you know, the more you have babies, the more babies you have, the harder your body has to work. And, you know, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just going to stick them all in, you know, smash my babies together. And I'm like, oh, okay. But prepare yourself for a longer recovery and then celebrate your amazing body. Be kind and celebrate your amazing body.
Yes. Yes. I wish we could all start internalizing that, like stop fighting against our bodies and start working with it. I mean, I made the joke, my parents are in town from Louisville, bless them. And I made the joke. So I sleep in a thumb splint every night. I'll be 40 next year. I sleep in a thumb splint, but I also have bunions, which are very sexy. So I could have the little toe things that pop your toes towards each other. I also have plantar fasciitis, which is why I'm never barefoot, which is another thing that I wear literally all day. And then I could also sleep in like those foot splints. And then my right thumb is starting to get a little sore too. So theoretically, I'm just thinking all of the things that I need to be in my best place and sleep. And then going back to what you're talking about with putting your arm in the door frame to stretch your shoulders while you're brushing your teeth. I sleep in the smallest little ball, which is not good for, am I hunched over? For those of you on the YouTube, you can see, the rest of you imagine. And I'm like, that can't, and my neck is forward, which means like the opposite, right? It's like all of these things that we have to do as we get older that we just didn't even think about, that now, you know, I'm trying to figure out ways to work with my body and not fight against it, certainly. And we're all getting older and we have to put in some of that work, the Pilates, the stretching, the way we're nourishing our bodies and fueling it is different. And being educated on that's very important.
I see your sexy nighttime routine, by the way, and I raise you a bite guard.
Oh, me too.
And earplugs, because my husband's like a little piglet next to me. So like, I'm kind of all like, get my period, and I'm like, plug, 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 everything, plug, all covered up.
Plug it all up. Yep. I knew we were going to be, yes. Upper and lower trays. Yes. Same, because I grind my teeth because I have TMJ.
Yep.
Definitely earplugs. he's going in a couple weeks to get one of those sleep studies done, and somebody help me because I'm ready for a sleep divorce, which could be a whole other podcast episode. But
there is, yes, lots of research that said, well, that's why I have a super king size bed, because I'm like, I love you, but don't touch me when I sleep.
We have a king size bed, and I literally have, I don't know if I should make Berlin Wall jokes because that was a very fraught time in the world, but,
Sure, but
I
you
have
can
literally
say, a
wall
yeah.
down the middle of our bed of pillows so that we don't touch, because sleep is so restorative and so helpful. And we've romanticized so many things about relationships and romantic relationships, and and they all lived happily ever after. And it's like, no, it's a lot of hard work, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes too with the idea of like, we have this expectation, certainly over here in the States, but I think it's kind of a global thing of like, we can achieve perfection, we can achieve happiness. And if we're not happy, something's wrong. And so we're fighting against all of these emotions, and we're participating in, toxic positivity. Well, it could be worse, or at least it's not this, or whatever. And instead of just kind of sitting in those emotions and allowing ourselves to feel these things. And it's so detrimental to our ability to like sit and process and allow ourselves, hey, it's okay to not be okay. And I'm not okay right now. And that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And, I think that the relationship you have with your partner also plays a massive part in your kind of recovery.
Certainly.
I'm putting a pin, by the way, in the TMJ, because I want to come back to that. So remind me, because my brain bounces all over the place.
So yes, we'll do another episode about our adult ADHD. I'll have you come back.
Oh my God, seriously. That podcast, I was like, but your partner plays a massive role in kind of how you kind of work together as a team. And I hats off to all those single parents out there, because this is no joke. It's no joke. And I think so my husband and I have been together for 20 years, and so longer than I've been without him, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. And I feel that we're very honest about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And your kind of comment about sleep is really important, because we used to tag team in the early days, or with sleep, we would make sure that we were topped up, whether it was morning, noon, or night, somehow we would get sleep. And I find that, when the shit is hitting the fan, a lot of people just don't talk to their partners about the physiological changes that are happening in their body, because they're very embarrassed. They, there's this joke that, you should never go to the business end when your wife is delivering, because it's apparently like watching your favorite pub burn down. Yeah.
I've never heard that. Okay. Yes, because all of our body is meant to please men and other people.
Quite right. Yes. I mean, it's not for you. So
no. So I'm really concerned about how you feel about watching my vagina expand to the size of an Xbox controller.
Because at this moment, your feelings are the most important. Anyway, but
for me, it was more like, you're going to pass out if you see any of this goop and stuff. My husband can't even donate blood. His own blood. For me, it was that. This side of the conversation, you may piss all the way off. Bye.
Oh, talking of husbands, I love Christopher. Darling, I adore you. However, he saw me getting the cannula putting in, and he nearly passed out. So they sent a midwife into the theater for him.
Yep, sure.
Not me. I obviously got some, but they were like, we need your husband to have one just in case he passes out.
I love it.
Great. Yeah.
They at our hospital did not allow my husband to watch my epidural being put in, because they said that they had a woman's spouse pass out and bust his head open. And so then he was off into surgery or something while she's having the baby. And so they're like, we don't even care. You're not allowed to watch it, which again, he was not fighting them for that.
Yeah, let's make it all about you. But back to the vagina being your business. That a lot of women will not mention the way that they feel. And so one of the things that takes me neatly back to TMJ is, an overactive pelvic floor. And a lot of women experience kind of this grippiness. And I was so interested in what you were saying about unmanaged ADHD or like hyper distractedness kind of manifesting as anxiety, because postnatal anxiety, not the same as postnatal depression, although they live in a nice little tangle next to one another often. And a lot of women are super anxious because of becoming mamas. And then all of that anxiety lives in the body, and we're like this. And there is a connection between the jaw and the pelvic floor. And if you are often like this, your pelvic floor will also be like this.
Fascinating.
And, yes.
Fascinating.
And you probably also have really tight ankles as well.
Interesting.
And this is because there is a kind of super highway of fascia that runs from your jaw all the way down through your diaphragm, through your abdominal wall, through your pelvic floor, down your legs, and kind of around your ankles.
Yes.
Called the deep front fascial line.
Yes.
And if you've got, like, you know, tin can telephones, those old-fashioned things, you pull it tight and you can use it beneficially. We can use those in exercise. But what I see so much these days is really like tight, highly kind of wound up women who have got really tight jaws, and they are experiencing leaking, not because they're not strong, it's because their pelvic floor is like, I cannot do this anymore.
Yes.
It's just like this all day. And then it's when you cough and run and need to do things, your pelvic floor is like, I just can't do it. I'm knackered.
I'm spent.
Yeah.
Wow. It's so fascinating. I've definitely told this anecdote as well, but I have bursitis in my scapula, and I went and got a massage. Actually, interestingly enough, I was pregnant at the time, so I was on my side, of course. But she was massaging my armpit, and I could feel it in the back where it is. And it's just a fascinating, again, like, not everyone has to take anatomy and physiology. And so the things that are all interconnected in our body, physically, your jaw to your pelvic floor to your ankles, but also to that emotional component of, like, when you are taking that time for yourself, when you are utilizing those, like, the more flexible you are, the less likely, sometimes I think there are arguments about this, but I can't imagine how it doesn't connect, less likely you are to be injured. Like, if you trip and roll your ankle and your ankle is more flexible, it's less likely to tear or rip, right?
But yeah, so I mean, little trick we can do together.
Yes.
Put your hand on your lower back.
Yes.
And then circle your other arm.
You
feel movement under the hand underneath your back, on your back. Yeah. That is because just because you're moving your arm here means nothing is moving and working in isolation. So all of that is like fascia, and it's all connected through your musculoskeletal system. That's the one. I got up at 6:30 this morning to take my son to his secondary school, so I'm a bit bleary.
I'm with you.
but that's why also, like, to your point about the emotional side, the body is not, when you're working on like rehabbing, you're not just looking at, let's look at the pelvic floor. You know, you need to look at the whole body, because mums move in the most incredibly monotonous patterns. There are like movements that we do again and again and again and again, whether it's picking up toys from the floor, you know, you're squatting all the time, whether it's, you know, you're kind of putting snacks in the back of the car, you're rotating. Like, there's these little movements we're doing all the time. And so it's not enough to just focus on your posture and your awareness while you're exercising. You need to take that like off the mat and into your everyday life as well. Because if every time you're picking your babies up, you're kind of doing it from your lower back, you're going to end up with, you know, sore back. And if you're feeding your baby like this, like hunched over position, you know, you've got your one elbow up, it's no wonder that you're in agony, because you're doing that hours a day.
Yes. Or if you're breastfeeding, I remember I had my breast friend, which was an amazing invention. But even then I recognized that I was like bent over like a shrimp. And especially when they're younger, you're breastfeeding a ton. So then you just kind of live in that space. And then there's all this tension in other places of your body because you're not being intentional, or you're figuring out a different maneuvered system, which, I mean, breastfeeding is hard enough by itself, but all of those things, the repetitive or the things that you're not paying attention to, or like de Quervain's tendinosis, which I got from playing golf, which is an embarrassing
You
story.
really have had fun with injuries, haven't you?
I'm telling you, well, my parents would love to jump on real quick and be like, let's talk about all the hospital bills. But it's actually called new mother's tendinosis because you're carrying a baby. Those of you who are watching, and those of you who are not, my arm is up and you're carrying a baby, but imagine your hand is pointed down. And so that top part of your wrist gets inflamed. And so that is something they call new mothers, because so many moms have that because they're holding the baby and they're not thinking about it and they're not being intentional. And then all of a sudden you're in agony to the point I had to have surgery on it. I mean, that stuff hurts. So
yeah. But it's the same. But it's also, so mums typically have a posture type called upper and lower cross syndrome, which sounds really like scary, but it's not. So it's when you put the word syndrome or dysfunction, it sounds really kind of terrifying. But if you if you're sitting in a chair and then you're slumped at the front, you can feel how like your ribs kind of really your under boob is almost sort of sitting on your belly. And that's your diaphragm there. So if you are in this rounded back posture type, your diaphragm is being kind of compressed and it can't really do its job properly. And then if you're rounded in the back, in order to see properly, you have to lift your chin, which is usually popped forward like a little cuckoo. And then the back of your neck is really tight as well. And so you've got all of those kind of things going on. So you get tight in the front of your chest and then tight in the back of your neck. And then you get very weak in the front of your neck and very weak in your upper back. So you end up with this kind of cross of weak, and tight, tight. And that's why it's called like upper cross. And then the lower part of you end up with often like a tilted pelvis where the weight of the baby has kind of pulled the pelvis forward. So the front of your hips get very tight and the lower back gets very tight. And then the abdominal wall is very weak and the glutes are very weak. And then you end up with this cross in the lower part of you as well. So for mums, that's why you'll often say, oh, my hips are really tight. My back is really sore. And my front of my chest and my upper back, they all feel weak and tired and kind of overworked. And that is literally because of the posture type that gets kind of just developed over use of being in particular positions. So that's why I said to you, like a nice stretch across the front of your chest feels amazing because it's the opposite of what you've been doing, like a human croissant, like rounded round, you know? And like stretching out your hips. But it all of that feels good, but ultimately you also need to be strengthening the opposite sides of those things. It's all very well to stretch, you then also need the strengthening. And that's what I love about Pilates is it's like long and strong. And then when you get the kind of, you understand then mum posture and you understand, you know, all of the other things. That's why like specific postnatal is so different to like your average Gen Pop Pilates. And I think that's one of the things that kind of, again, I could get on a hobby horse about is this idea that you could do a group postnatal class and they all be at totally different stages in their recovery and they're all experiencing different things. And apparently your one exercise is going to like sort out all of these women. And they're not going to get egotistical by turning over to the left and being like, well, fucking hell, if she's doing it, I'll do it. They're all going to just do that. You know, it's rubbish. And, you know, they're not going to get the support that they need. And that's why, like, I do this work one-to-one specifically for all of the little kinks and all the little things that people kind of need that are different to each other. And then you can go on once you understand like what's going on, then you can go on. But we women come up with all sorts of weird places to put ourselves to serve other people. And it's usually our sweet little babies.
I love that. So I am a big fan. Anytime I've ever gone to a yoga or a Pilates class or anything like that, where I definitely acknowledge my lack of expertise, I'm always like, oh, feel free to put your hands on me and tell me exactly where I'm doing it wrong, because I don't know what I'm doing and I want to get the most out of this time. and I want to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. Also, do not injure myself, but also because I want to take this with me and move forward with it. And so that's so cool that you do that. Do you ever do any virtual services one-to-one, or are they all in person?
So the brilliant thing about it is that it can be done virtually, and actually was so great because I went all in my business during COVID. Like I took voluntary redundancy in July 2020, and then I was like, right, this is happening. And of course it was still all online at that point. So I did all of my initial kind of work online, which I loved. So it is definitely possible to do it online. But I love the hands-on element that you're able to then kind of, it just feels different when someone's kind of like, I mean, here, and they're rubbing their hands down you and saying, poke, poke, prod. It definitely is possible to do it online, but I think it, you know, I prefer it. And I think a lot of people prefer to do that kind of work in person. But the thing as well is that, you know, I'm only one human being. Like I can't teach everybody, like, you know, I fill my whole day, night and everything. And that's why what I'm also trying to do is encourage more Pilates instructors to actually do this work. Because mums out there, like, there are so many mums. If you're living in a town that's got a nursery or a school, then there are mums who need you. I think in the UK, there's something like 650,000 babies born last year. So wherever you live, there are babies been born, which means there are mamas out there that need support. And every one of the Pilates instructors that I work with who have kind of gone on to specialize in postnatal, exactly like you said at the beginning, they have become the support that they wished that they had had. And so I want to like encourage more Pilates instructors to be doing this work, to do it one-to-one, so that your mums kind of get the real support that they need that's specific to them, rather than a spray and pray kind of one size fits all. And because, you know, they're an amazing population, like, you know, they're an incredible population, and women need this support. Like there's such an unserved population for rehab, postnatal rehab specifically. And like, if there's a gap in the market where I live, I know there's a gap in the market where all of these other women live, and these Pilates instructors. So I'm like, come teach these amazing women. And if there's something you don't know, like, you can learn. So like they're a beautiful population of women to teach.
It's so exciting because we've got it from both sides. So those of you who are listening who are like, oh my gosh, I need this. If you're in England, if you can get to London, you can go see Alice. But also, if you want to be a teacher, then you can take this training and you can actually be able to support the people in your areas. And then, of course, overarchingly, again, we are encouraging everybody to take up space, to ask questions, to be high maintenance. That's not a bad thing anymore, to be able to allow yourself to take up this space. And so it's very exciting to be able to have these kind of conversations.
It is. And also to just encourage any woman or childbearing person who is out there experiencing either some difficulty during pregnancy that is beyond the kind of, you know, you're going to get lots of support during pregnancy, but once you kind of fall out the other side, do not accept a 6-week waft as you're like the end. You know, if things don't feel right, go and get help. Ask questions. Do not just say, oh, it's fine. Like, you know yourself better than anybody ever will. And if something doesn't feel right, do not stop until you get the support that you need and you get the answers that help you feel better, because you deserve to feel great in your body. And just because you've had a baby that's gone and literally put a hand grenade inside of you, and then your life as well, and you feel like you literally can't tell your ass from your elbow, it doesn't last forever. I can tell you that with certainty. But you should not ever put up with and tolerate not feeling great in your body, because it is possible to feel strong and powerful and in control of yourself. It does take work. No one can wave a magic wand and make you feel amazing in 2.5 minutes, but you you put the work in and you will feel amazing and
Yes.
strong and powerful. And every woman deserves to feel that way.
Every single one of us. That's absolutely correct. Well, thank you so much, Miss. I honestly, I have like 8 other things I want to talk about, but I also want to be respectful of your time. So I guess I'm just going to have to ask you to come back on sometime.
I would love to.
But I'll put it in the show notes. Can you let everybody know where they can find you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you are a Pilates instructor who kind of is really interested in exploring more postnatal and how to grow your business with postnatal, I will also give you a little freebie, which is like the 7-step essential steps to postnatal rehab, which I'll share with you. So that'll go in the show notes as well. So you can download that little freebie.
Great. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Well, thank you again for your time. Thank you everybody for showing up. These conversations are so important. Feel free, if you all don't mind for a second, take a moment, give us those 5 stars, maybe write us a little review. But more importantly, please share this conversation with your friends. Share this with somebody who is pregnant or is thinking about getting pregnant, or share it with your Pilates instructor because you want them to know more about postnatal specifically information. And for everybody out there, be curious, not judgmental, and we'll see you next time.